Ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker is going to tell us why digital is not necessarily sustainable. She is an AI and business strategist. So, talking about sustainability tonight, let's give a warm welcome from Oslo, Elin Hauge.
On a dark and rainy Tuesday in November last year, I attended an event in Oslo for business leaders in the electrical grid sector. I was there as a keynote speaker on artificial intelligence. Before my keynote, they did a Kahoot session, and one of the questions was, what is the most important action that your company can take towards achieving the UN sustainability goals? The most predominant answer was digitalization of products and services. How many of you could potentially have said the same? So quite a few hands. And for the online audience, please also leave your comments in the chat. We tend to think that anything digital is sustainable because these data are just floating wirelessly around in the air without leaving any footprints. Or perhaps they do. I've spent my entire career helping leaders understand and embrace digital technologies, such as artificial intelligence. On that Tuesday in November last year, I really had to rethink my role. Because you see, this digital transformation, of which I have been such a strong proponent for so many years, is leaving behind a trail of alarming environmental problems. And the more I dig into the flip side of digital, the more concerned I become about the price that our planet is paying for our digital habits, addictions, and ambitions. In this talk, I will give you some insight around why and how this will affect us. And I will give you 3 recommendations for what you as leaders and decision makers can do about that. But first, let's just agree that digital technologies are indeed important for the sustainable future of our businesses and societies, such as making healthcare and medicine smarter and more efficient, securing food production, and making cities better and healthier to live and work in. But did you know that building, training, and deploying an advanced deep learning model may require as much electricity as 30 Norwegian households for a year? Moore's law states that the processing capacity of a CPU doubles about every 1.5 to 2 years. That's quite known, right? In AI, we have a similar law. It states that the processing capacity required for the training of the latest advancements within AI doubles every 3.4 months. The data centers of the world gobble up about 1% of the world's total energy consumption, or about 3 times as much as the entire country of Finland. But let me give you a bit more flavor to that. Meta has recently been planning a new hyperscale data center in Zeewolde in the Netherlands. The plan was for this data center to serve WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram across Europe. They would require as much electricity as a city of about 460,000 people. It would take up an area of about 165 hectares of farmable land. That would be the same as about 231 international-sized soccer fields. Or if we continue to use it for food production, that could give us a yield of about 1,400 metric tons of wheat, which would give us about 2.8 million loaves of bread. Meta faced a lot of opposition for these plans, from politicians and from the local citizens, and for now, these plans have been put on hold for this location. Bitcoin is known to consume a lot of energy. 1 Bitcoin transaction requires as much electricity as 1 Nordic household for a month, or about 100,000 Visa transactions. Now, in the Bitcoin ecosystem, there are about 7 transactions per second. Now, if you calculate that up to a year, that means as much electricity as 18 million households for a full year. That is the combined sum of all Nordic households. Now let me turn to the hardware end of digital for a moment. All electronic devices contain one or more data chips, perhaps like this one. Now, one of the most important components in a data chip is the semiconductor. You probably all know that the semiconductor industry has suffered greatly during the COVID pandemic, and there is a huge shortage. But we have a bigger problem, which is kind of small actually, because a semiconductor is in the range of nanometers, and we would need an electron microscope to see them. The semiconductor industry is extremely resource intensive. It requires a lot of electricity. It requires a lot of precious metals. It requires a lot of clean water. And it creates a lot of waste. It is actually more dirty than the automotive industry. If you look at the entire manufacturing process of electronic devices, 80% of the environmental footprint of electronic devices is related to the production, meaning the manufacturing process alone. And when we're done with them, we throw them away, and they become very toxic waste. In 2021, we, the world, created nearly 58 million metric tons of electrical waste. That is more than the total weight of the Chinese wall. And it ends up in places like this, Agbogbloshy, in Ghana, which is the world's largest dump site for electrical waste. Now imagine this scenario. A chicken walks around on Agbogbloshy. The chicken lays an egg. A child comes along. The child finds the egg, picks it up, brings it home, and gets it for supper. This child has now ingested 220 times the maximum daily intake of chlorinated dioxins. And according to the World Health Organization, 18 million children are right now in severe and immediate health risk because of working in this informal electrical waste industry. All this and the digitalization of businesses and societies has barely started. It doesn't add up. Making children eat vegetables may be a really daunting challenge, and my stepson, Marcus, is no exception. He keeps rubbing that oil lamp, hoping that someday the genie will pop out and make candies healthy. We are grown-ups, we know that that's never going to happen. But still, we keep rubbing that same oil lamp, hoping that someday digital will magically solve the UN sustainability goals. We need to stop rubbing that oil lamp, and we need to start taking real actions. Now, that will mean efforts on many levels, such as taxation, legislation, global incentives. But the good news is that each and one of you, as leaders, decision makers, can make a real difference. And I will give you 3 recommendations for what you can do right now. And to help you remember this, my stepson Marcus created this illustration. Let me introduce you to CCR22. So let's start with recommendation number 1, the head of the robot. Demand green computation power. Keep in mind that 3 out of the 5 largest corporations on this planet are cloud platform providers. One of their main KPIs is consumption of cloud services, which means electricity, which is a direct antagonist to sustainability. Now, they're all transitioning to green energies, and you can help them by demanding that your data and your processes shall be powered by green energy. And according to Ericsson research, if the entire ICT industry transitions to green energy, the total carbon footprint of this industry can be reduced by as much as 80%. Now, recommendation number 2, the heart of the robot. Build a culture of computational efficiency. Create an awareness in your organization that the collection, storage, and processing of data requires electricity. And the more data you collect, And the more complex the processing, the more electricity is involved. And actually, of all the data we currently collect on this planet, 90% of it becomes waste after 3 months and is never used again. Now, you can include computational efficiency into your ESG reports, and you can include computational efficiency into all business cases around digital initiatives. Recommendation number 3, reuse and recycle hardware, the arms and the legs of the robot. Reuse the computers and the smartphones in your company for as long as possible, and when you don't need them anymore, make sure you replace them in a safe and sustainable way. And let me just give you one short story for inspiration. Aker BioMarine is the world's leading producer of krill. They have an annual revenue of about 250 million euros. A couple of years ago, they entered into a partnership with TechStep, where TechStep took over the entire lifecycle management of the smartphones in Aker BioMarine. Now, the employees of Aker BioMarine, they get new smartphones about every 2 years. TechStep repairs and refurbishes the old ones and sells them off to a second generation of users. Aker BioMarine saves about 150 to 200 euros per smartphone. And most of all, their environmental footprint related to the use of smartphones is reduced by about 50%. Now, in this talk, I have hopefully given you some more insight into why digital is not necessarily sustainable. We need to develop a planet-centric approach to digital transformation. And I have given you 3 recommendations for what you can do right now. So let me just repeat them. Number 1, the head of the robot, demand green computation power. Number 2, the heart of the robot, build a culture of computational efficiency. Number 3, the arms and the legs of the robot, reuse and recycle hardware, and you can do it right now in 2022. Because you see, on this very day, about 870 children have been born into the highly digitalized societies of the Nordic countries. These children are likely to grow up learning to use digital tools before they learn to walk. Let's make sure that these children grow up in a world where digital is indeed sustainable. And it is up to you as leaders and decision makers to make that difference. Thank you.
Elin Hauge, ladies and gentlemen. Powerful message. What a great follow-up to what Madam Ambassador said about green energy. Thank you so much. You guys are not a very good audience. We have received no questions. No, I don't want to say that. You're wonderful. But do please remember to send in questions, because then I have to ask you a question, and I have a good one, actually. Unless our our jury members, I would have one. Can I ask my question? Okay. Your title, AI business strategist.
Yeah.
So you're the evil one, really.
Yeah.
You're the AI people. You're the one who's draining this with the law of draining energy. And so, what are you people doing? The AI specialists. Do you have a code of conduct? I mean, how do you keep your people in line before telling us all to be great in this field?
A very good question. Now, I worked in the consulting industry for a fair share of my career. And yes, I have been on the dark side
yes.
for many of those years. But we really need to start talking about the flip side of digital, because it's not either or. We need to work with both perspectives. And that's why I say we need to develop a planet-centric approach to digital transformation. And AI definitely has a role, but we need to maybe rethink where we use that AI and not just use it for whichever purpose we come up with.
Thank you ever so much for coming. What a great presentation. Give everybody a big hand. Thank you.